So it's prepping to live stream, and as soon as I have that link, I'll send it.
Okay, great. Send it on here, and then I'll have to email it to myself then.
Sorry, Jackie, how are you sending that new link?
Well, I can pull up my email.
Yes, email it to Stephen. And then could you put it on this chat here?
Yep.
On the chat.
We have to start. Hang on.
So that's that.
Okay, so I've got.
Copy.
Oh, I don't. Something's come through, Jackie, but I don't know how it's come through to me.
I'll send it to you, Stephen.
All right.
On your email now. Hang on. 2 secs.
I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna prove it.
I'll send it on your. It should be through to me now.
Email.
Yeah, I'll send it on your WhatsApp. It'll be easier for you.
Oh, WhatsApp. Yeah, go on. Yeah. I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna prove it. Prove it.
Right, it's coming through to you now, Steve.
All right, mate.
That's the new link.
It just says okay. So what?
So just then
okay.
copy
So
that. Copy that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Forward. Twitter. And just say what? This is the new link for the link wasn't working.
Yeah, just say technical hitch live now on new link.
Okay. Technical hitch. Oh. Live now on new link. Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you sent it?
Yeah, I've sent it as well. I'm going to retweet that. I'll put it on the Humpty Dumpty thing.
Live now on new link. See you in a bit. Okay, I've just tweeted that. Yeah, great. Okay, so we've all tweeted that.
Yep.
Okay. Now we're back on Zoom.
We've got you back.
A Zoom, 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 Zoom.
Zoom, 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 zoom.
Da, 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 da. From me to you, I got arms along.
Let's get this going. People hopefully will come on over in a second. Technical difficulties. Everybody's Zoom apparently hates me. So welcome and happy Sunday. You may know me as Jackie Abbott from, well, actually I go by Jackie Merrill online from Angus's Angels. And we've got Andrew Gower with us. Say hi, Andrew.
Hello, everybody.
And Stephen Walters with us.
Hi, guys. Hi, Andy. Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
We made it.
We did, finally. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's doing all right?
Yeah, hanging in there in these strange times.
Yeah,
it's a little bit odd. So I'm going to start you off with something a little bit simple and ask, how did the two of you meet?
Oh, our illustrious past. Andrew, do you want to take it?
Yeah, well, I told Stephen now that I knew him before we met. Before we met, I knew Stephen from a job, The Village. And I just missed him because actually he started some show called Outlander. He had to do Outlander instead of doing The Village. Is that correct?
What? Yeah, I did season 1, and and then I was supposed to have done season 2.
Exactly.
They had the story written, and I was contracted to Outlander, so they couldn't make the schedules fix. So
we would have met. We would have met in lovely
on The Village.
Yeah, on The Village. Would have in season
in Derbyshire.
2. Yeah, but instead, it was way more exciting than Derbyshire. We were on a charter flight the most delayed flight I've ever been on, and probably touch wood will ever be on, with an amazing actor called Ken Cranham and a young lad, great lad called Mike Peluso, who's a lovely chap. and we were on a flight to Morocco, and actually weirdly on that flight is where we started chatting about our love for the Beatles, for the Merseybeat scene. And as we've told a lot of you, that's where the name Tommy cropped up for the first time, Tommy Quickly. So yeah.
What I remember specifically about that flight was obviously me and Andy were talking about the village and stuff, and we were talking about our love for the Beatles and all things Merseybeat and the 60s in general, not just the Merseybeat, although that was a phenomenal, on it all of its own, really. And he was talking about how big of a fan he was of the Fab Four. So I turned around to Andy and I said, well, I'm going to test this guy. And if he answers this correctly, I know he's a fan. So I said to him, had he heard of an artist called Tommy Quickly? And he went, yeah, of course. And I said, well, what song did the Beatles give to Tommy Quickly? And immediately he said, Tip of My Tongue. And I think right there and then we were friends for life. Yeah. We've had our ups and downs, but in that moment, I thought this guy knows his stuff. And it became in Morocco, because we were so bored out there in the in Ouarzazate, yeah, in just it was Eastern Africa or wherever it is. The Tommy thing just became a kind of conflated joke just to keep us going sometimes. And out of that was, I believe that was the genesis of our friendship and relationship. But it was also the sowing the seed for Humpty effing Dumpty.
Are we swearing on this? Are we allowed? I said it wasn't kid friendly.
No, fuck that, no.
I have to say, also to add to that as well, we were on the flight with kind of one of the icons from the 60s, 70s acting scene as well, Ken Cranham, who fueled the chat of
the passion. Yeah, Ken told an amazing story, and I knew he wasn't making it up because I've read a lot of books to do with that period. And he was talking about he was in the same room with Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison. And I knew what occasion he was talking about. It was a club called The Trip in 1968. And as you know, Andy, Ken was a straight up guy. And I said, Ken, you weren't there, man. He said, oh, Stephen, I was. I was like, oh my God. So it's like the stars slightly aligned in terms of meeting one another, and I'm so glad that we got to work with each other because of that as well, and become mates as well.
Yeah, definitely. So Andrew, I'm going to start with you on this question. Tell me a little bit about what drew you to acting.
Of what drew me? Good question. I was a delusional footballer, very delusional, not good enough at all. But up to the age of 17, I was delusional in the sense that I still thought I would be good enough to make it. I remember specifically having coming out the shower, and Joy, I don't know what happened, had an epiphany in the shower and was like, we'd lost the semi-final. And I said, keep
it clean.
It was after a game, it was covered in mud. And I said to my mum, I came out, I said to my mum, I'm not good enough, am I? And she kind of pulled that Gary Lineker face, from the 1990 World Cup when Gascoigne got booked. She pulled that face. And then anyway, acting for me came just through the love of reading and making a fool out of myself, and kind of I got the same buzz out of acting that I did from football, the kind of escapism, the taking risks. And actually, and I know I've done this with Stephen on several occasions, and I've said it in a few times to a lot of people. I find a lot of similarities between footballers and actors, and not saying that, that it's a very different profession. It's physical, but it's a lot more physical, but the mentality and I am always making analogies or using football as a metaphor for acting. So yeah, that was my route. That was my path.
Fantastic. Stephen?
Mine was, I had no actors or anything like that, or any sense of tradition in my family. I always remember there was a kid in a TV program that I watched at school called Grange Hill, and his name was George Christopher. And it was the first time that I remember being conscious of a guy who must have been from a similar background to me, same accent, on a TV show. And I remember the thought started germinating, whoever he was, I think I could do that, or I'd like to have a go at it.
Mhm.
And strangely enough, I met George Christopher years later and thanked him as well at Liverpool Lime Street, saying that he's to blame. And it just kind of went from that. At the time in Liverpool, there was only one, probably in the northwest of England. There was an agency called ART Casting. And it was in the days when, obviously, pre-internet, where you kind of went on the yellow pages and looked up a number. And we rung it and went in. And the agency was owned by a guy called Ricky Tomlinson, who is a kind of, I wouldn't say a national. Yeah, he's really respected in this country as an actor and comedian.
Yeah.
He's kind of a national institute in his own way. And he was in there, and we were just I went in with a kid called Gary Brooks, two snotty-nosed scruffs, and said, have you got any jobs? How do we get into acting? not really knowing what we were doing. We were just kind of naive, innocent. And he told us to clear off, and we went back again, and we went back. He said, look, there's an audition at Manchester, Granada, for the kids' TV program. If you don't get it, bugger off. And so me and Gary went, and I got that role, and it just snowballed from that. And again, a funny incidental of that, years later in a show called Ragged, I ended up playing Ricky Tomlinson in a drama about his life. So some things you can't write. Okay. So that was just really, really strange and really quite eerie.
Yeah.
But, you know,
and it's on YouTube. So if you haven't watched it, seriously, it's an incredible performance. Go watch it.
Directed by Johnny Vegas, written by a guy called John Lynch. And it's the story of Ricky Tomlinson, and specifically about how a book called The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist inspired him. It's like the working man's Bible. And it changed my life after reading it as well. So it's the story of that.
Thank you. So you kind of actually started this a little bit, Stephen, and told us a little bit about it. But the next question is, what was your first professional project, and what is the biggest lesson that you learned from it?
Oh, the biggest lesson. The first professional project I did was in relation to that story I just told you. I got the part, and it was an ITV series called Dramarama, which was a big kind of thing then. Looking back now, lots of good actors appeared in Dramarama, and they were well written. They were shot on film as well. I think they were shot on 35mm. They looked like little movies, but they were half an hour. And again, a strange aside, the guy who directed that was a guy called Julian Gerald, who went on to he was just starting, and he went on to have a great career as a director. I worked with him again, actually, on another TV show called Touching Evil. And what I learned from it, it's strange, because in that first job, I was surrounded by kids, because we were teenagers, like 14, 15. I was surrounded by kids that I had seen on TV as a child.
That's mad.
But very quickly, I kind of got my head around the fact that, okay, they're just people, and you do a scene and you say your line, and that's him. And in a way, what I learned was to try and block out any preconception that you have of that actor, to be your part. And it was that was on the first gig that I ever did. And, you know, when you work with actors you admire, or actors who are quote unquote famous or what have you, you have to very quickly get over the fact it's them, but you're there to do a job, and you're there to play a role, and they're playing a role, and you just get into that. In other words, being professional about it. Right. So I would say it taught me that. It taught me not to be deceived or sort of frightened by an image of something, just to crack on and treat it as a very a job, albeit a privileged job.
A good thing to learn. Andrew?
Yeah, my first job was a series called Monroe, and initially I was auditioning to play Jimmy Nesbitt's son out of drama school, and and that didn't work out, and I got told that didn't work out. But then in the same phone conversation, they said, but we've offered you one of the regular junior heart surgeons in the show, which, I mean, at that point I kind of collapsed to the floor, because I never thought I was going to make money out of acting, never mind, you know, on TV. And similar to Stephen, you know, get to act with somebody, you know, from the bloody Yellow Page advert, and amazing films as well, like Jimmy's done. But yeah, so that's my biggest thing, being on set with those people, probably was everything from the call sheet to who were all these, you know, hundreds of people on set. But the biggest thing was, because I wasn't really prepped as much as maybe drama school students are now with film and TV, the thing for me was probably the stamina. The stamina is it's a different stamina being on stage, and, you know, and in theatre to film and TV, you know, this sitting around and the biscuits and the cups of tea, how, you know, privileged we are to be in that position. But then in the flip of a switch, you can be on set doing a scene about, you know, whatever emotion that scene is. It can be the most raw emotion, or you can have, you know, you have to laugh. So that was the biggest kind of wake up call to me, was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to sort of look at my toolbox, my acting toolbox, and kind of move things around a bit. And that's still every job and I'm sure Stephen would agree, every job, there's the delight in that, because you never know what the set's going to be like, and you never know who's going to be on it, and you never know the challenges. Every day is, you embrace like this different challenge, and you just got to look at it from a fresh kind of blank slate. So that would be mine. Yeah.
Great.
And just to add to what Andrew said there, I think there is the different disciplines, but, you know, acting ultimately is acting. But I think there's a misconception sometimes that theatre is harder than screen acting. I think they're just very different. Screen acting has its own set of parameters,
Totally.
and its own set of problems. It's almost like, you know, you are sitting around for 6 hours, and then you have to be ready for that hour, that you have to find that emotion for that key scene in that story, whether it's a movie or a TV episode. And so it requires a kind of different level of concentration, awareness. It's kind of, you have to, like, it's concentrated periods rather than in a play. You get a flow. You can just go at it once. When it's TV and film, it's a different animal. And I guess as an actor, I've always objected to the idea that the stage is somehow more difficult or harder. I don't believe that it is.
No, I agree with you. That, you know, they both have, as you say, they both have their challenges. They both have their challenges, but they're different challenges, but the same core truth is there with them all. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit. I got a Mercy Beat question for you. So both of you are musical. Stephen, you've written and performed many songs. We've seen a lot of them on Facebook and Twitter. And Andrew, you and a friend founded the band Emerson when you were 15. So do you think that the Mercy Beat sound influenced your music?
I would say that John Lennon had a great line. That's how he perceived himself and the Beatles, that there really wasn't a Mersey Beat scene. What happened was lots of acts came about through the Beatles' success. Mm-hmm. So everybody the industry descended on Liverpool or Manchester, the northwest of England, and signed anybody that looked remotely like them or could sing in tune. And I think when you properly analyze the Mersey Beat scene, if you were being really, really honest about it, there's not many great musical talents that came out of it. I think it was the Beatles that spearheaded the whole thing, and they opened up the floodgates, and certain artists very gratefully went through those floodgates and got a hit or two. But as for a Mersey Beat scene or a Mersey Beat sound, I think that's being conflated with history, like most things. I think the Beatles were at the front of it, and they were just a phenomena and a unique thing in and of itself, separate from the so-called Mersey Beat.
You can't help, you know, being from Liverpool, growing up in a house in Liverpool, I couldn't help but you know, I don't think anybody in the world, be it Ed Sheeran, be it any new band coming through now, you know, whoever we're talking about, everybody's kind of, it's funneled from the Beatles, that the whole songwriting, being able to write your own songs, and being in a Liverpool house, you know, growing up, that sound was in my ears. So my answer's a definite yes, but it's kind of probably somewhere in the subconscious.
I think, you know, if you took like acts like, and I like them in my own way personally, to be honest with you, like Jerry and the Pacemakers and the Foremost and Cilla Black, I think it's a fair bet to assume that we would never have heard of any of those had it not been for the Beatles. And I think it goes back to the genesis of what the whole Mersey beat scene was. You had this one extraordinary, once in a millennia band that did what they did. And at the very beginning of that, there was a few acts that got through because of their generosity and because they opened those doors.
So I have a fan question for you. And Andrew, you've kind of already answered it, but Janet Merrill wants to know if you think the music of the Mersey Beat would have had such an influence on you if you weren't from Liverpool.
Good question, Janet. Yes, I do. I think if you love music, I mean, you love music, you can appreciate, you know, the especially, I mean, the Beatles, the Fab Four, you know, their music. If you don't have a taste, if you don't have a specific sound that you like, I'm sure the Beatles would give you, in all their plethora of songs, they'll give you at least one song that you, at least one, maybe at most two songs that you'll be keen to listen to on repeat. So I'd say yes. The answer to that is definitely.
I agree with Andrew. I think it's almost it's almost rebellious to say that I don't like the Beatles. And when someone says that to me, I kind of laugh, because I say, well, what do you like in music? Do you like ballads? Do you like rock and roll? Do you like blues? Do you like trippy songs? Do you like acoustic songs? Because no matter what,
song to go to bed
song
nights.
To go to bed, lullabies, you know, fucking cartoon songs, you know, they did it and they were the first. And, you know, the Beatles did something for everyone. And so I'm always slightly aware and slightly cautious of those that don't like the Beatles. I have a problem with it.
I always quote Alan Partridge when they say, Alan, what's your favorite Beatles album? And he goes, it would have to be the best of the Beatles.
Exactly. And which is the Blue and Red album.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So kind of going off of that question a little bit, which modern bands do you think capture the essence of that Beatles Mersey Beat sound and bring it forward into the 21st century?
Oasis in their prime. I think, you know, they had a great look. They look great. They are clearly style themselves on the Beatles visually. Their clothes, their haircut, their attitude, their humor. And I think the thing that they have in common with that is they're both from the Northwest. So there's that kind of humor thing that's in the genes and in the bones. The songs, I think, are very, I wouldn't say they're trying to ape the Beatles, but they're clearly influenced by the Beatles. So I think when I think of bands or even individual artists, they're the ones that and what I love about Oasis is they don't hide their love for the Beatles and the influence on their sound. So I would say Oasis.
Yeah, Oasis they don't shy away from writing a love song using rock and roll music, you know, which is again the Beatles, you know, the progress from a skiffle band writing about having your heart broken for four young lads from Liverpool. Exactly the same with, you know, Oasis being from Manchester. They you know, many of an Oasis song is about love, and Noel Gallagher's still writing songs about that. So that's that kind of, and the way they talk about the world, they can laugh at themselves, very similar to those guys. So I'd steal Oasis. I mean, I always keeping it. My brother's very good. My middle brother's very good at always sending music over to me. new music. He's my biggest kind of like guru for. I go to him for my music. So, but I've got a thing for listening to bands from the Northwest, like the Blossoms and the Coral when they were doing stuff originally.
Coral, great.
Yeah, Coral were fantastic. But originally, yeah, the ones that spring to mind straight away is definitely Oasis.
And there's another band as well called Crowded House, an Australian or New Zealand band.
Yes.
They did songs like It's Only Natural, 4 Seasons in One Day. Very, very kind of songsmith-fied, all about the song, the structure of the song, verse, middle eight, chorus, classic songwriting, which the Beatles were the template for.
Yeah, I listened to a band called the Hummingbirds as well from Liverpool. Actually,
Brilliant.
Hummingbirds, fantastic. They do
Brilliant
a cappella and harmonies similar to the Beatles. So yeah, they're cool. Check them out if anybody's online right now, which I hope you are. Check them out. The Hummingbirds.
I hope everybody's madly writing all these down so they can go check them out. So I have a fan question from Nancy Hibbard, and hers is an interesting question. She'd like to know why you think much of the Mercy sound is so tinged with melancholy, and if it might have something to do with the fading glory of the city's past.
What? What? Liverpool is on the up, man.
It is on the up now.
Liverpool is the greatest city in England.
It is.
Facta mundo Ringo. Liverpool's on the up, even in coronavirus period.
Number one.
Yeah. So I disagree with the context of the question. I think Liverpool is, yeah. I mean, there may have been songs that are tinged with a certain sadness or a certain blues feel, but that's just a part of great music. And as for the town and the city, I think the sky's the limit.
It's that So Fare Thee Well, My Old True Love. Is that
Precisely.
song? Yeah.
Yeah. Who's that by?
Liverpool leaving. It's not the leaving of Liverpool that grieves me. That song, I forget the name of it, but it's at every pub in Liverpool when you're having a drink, and they've got some guy in the corner starts singing. That's that song. The stamping of the feet, and like Liverpool is. I would just say when I go back to Liverpool and I get into Lime Street, I get the tingles down the side of my neck, and especially when Stephen's waiting under the clock for me, it's even better. Or outside of Boots, but I mean the melancholy of the city. I think if there's ever a city that deal with the melancholy by using their sense of humor, that's definitely
their talent.
We do love a moan. We love to have a moan, but every Scouser, I would say, just has a sense of humor and can laugh at themselves.
But it has been a city that has been stigmatized as well politically, and it's been a city that's had to fight its own battles. I remember a great line that I heard, that most Liverpudlians consider themselves Liverpudlians before being British or English. Mm. It's like a place in and of itself, and unless you're from Liverpool or a place that is like that, I don't think you can really connect to it or really understand it. It has its own set of parameters and ideas and thoughts about who we are to ourselves. And I don't know if I think there is an us and them sometimes. And I think there is a sort of collective kind of thought of Liverpool people are their own kind, are their own. I think it's a special place, and it's a special kind of people. You get good and bad eggs everywhere. But I think pound for pound, it's a great place. So whoever asked that question, was it Nancy?
Yeah.
I disagree with the context of the question.
But there has, I mean, everybody's experiencing melancholy. We've all experienced melancholy. Yeah. But the way Scousers deal with melancholy is often to make a joke about it.
Well, and it's interesting, Stephen, because you were talking about how Liverpudlians consider themselves from Liverpool first and England second, and it was interesting because when I visited, it was probably the most friendly city I've ever been to.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean, it was Ken Dodd always said that it was a great famous comedian from Liverpool called Ken Dodd. Check him out if you don't know anything about Ken Dodd. He was a genius, and I was blessed enough to meet Ken one evening and saw him live from the side of the theatre. I'll never forget it, and I'll never forget speaking to him. But he said that the Liverpool audiences were always hard to please because everybody in the audience thinks they're a comedian. So there's that kind of, I just think there's a strong identity there that doesn't apologize.
Mhm.
And that is friendly, whether you're from America, like you found, very welcoming.
Mhm.
We'll be the first to buy you a drink. Try and make you laugh, try and make you feel welcome. And you tend to feel that in certain cities. Glasgow's like that, I would say.
Glasgow, yeah, as far as cities go, Glasgow feels the most like Liverpool.
Yeah, I agree, man.
So do you remember when you were introduced to the Beatles and were you instantly in love?
Yes, it was love at first sight. Funny enough, I was in the Asda last week, and my old neighbour, bless her, Eileen and Tommy Carrington, they were from Ireland, and their sons were obsessed with the Beatles. And they were about teenagers, and I was like a young kid. We said hello and stuff, and I said, you're to blame for my obsession with the Beatles, because I always used to go next door, and they'd always have the Beatles on, and they all could play guitar. So they taught me my first kind of guitar licks and riffs and stuff. Oh. So, to be honest with you, I feel really blessed that I was introduced to the Beatles as a child, and it has been, without sounding corny about it, it is an ongoing love affair. The love for the Beatles grows. It's just, I bore people with it. I know I do, but it's beyond words. It's beyond comprehension sometimes, what they did and what they mean to me personally.
Mine was the first time. My granddad gave me some old LPs to keep for myself, and then one of them was Hard Day's Night, and then I had that in my drawer, and then that's where my kind of research. But I mean, it was played on Yesterday, Let It Be. All those songs were played in the house all the time, and then like In My Life's like my nan's favorite song. So just the LP is my first memory, though, having the LP in my drawer, and just like my intrigue was like, oh, let's listen to it, let's learn the words to all these songs, so that would be my granddad's LP.
I think most of us have a story like that. I mean, mine was slow dancing to Let It Be with my dad in the living room when I was like 4.
Yeah.
That's my first memory of the Beatles.
Wow, what a great memory.
Which is why it's my favorite Beatles song. So
do you know what that song's about?
Tell us.
It was just about how the Beatles were in kind of going through a massive upheavals personally, as a band. Personally, it was kind of coming to the end, and Paul was kind of depressed, and he had a dream. The Mother Mary in the song is his mother. Mm-hmm. It's not like as in the Virgin Mary. And he said he had a dream where his mother came to him and said, let it be. It's all going to be all right. Don't worry about it. And being the genius that he is, he falls out of bed and writes another classic.
So this one's an interesting one. Has there ever been a Beatles song that you thought perfectly described one of your characters?
Oh, God. When I get to the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide. Then I stop and I turn and I go for a ride. Helter Skelter, I played a few lunatics.
Yeah. Did you have blisters on your fingers, Stephen?
What?
Did you have blisters on your fingers?
I got blisters on my fingers. That's an in-joke. You can hear that at the end. Ringo screams that at the end of Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter, funnily enough, there was my old drama teacher used to say that with any role that you played, kind of go into your music vocabulary and kind of a song that may help you to inhibit or find the character in some way, like a sensory thing, a song. And so there'd be many a Beatles songs that I played for certain parts where I would just play it, after dinner or in between takes, or, music is a great, could be a great help when preparing for a part. But Helter Skelter springs to mind first, I would say, just to get you in that kind of, let's go mental kind of vibe.
Yeah, I've never used a Beatles song for a character, but I mean, what would?
Hang on, I thought you were singing Yellow Submarine for Bonnie Prince Charlie.
I think Bonnie Prince Charlie's would be
What would Bonnie sing?
Michelle.
Michelle.
Michelle, my
Something decadent.
yeah, exactly. Very sort of regal, peacocky, as I always say. Yeah, and also he speaks a bit of French in it, don't they? So bit of French.
Yeah.
So how about Angus?
I think Angus would be probably Helter Skelter. Or something. I'm trying to think. A heavy Lennon song, like something like "Yeah Blues" or "Revolution."
Oh,
Come on. Yeah. It's Angus is all or nothing. It's like, let's have the fucking fight now. It's all or nothing. It's war. I'm going to die for my cause. I'm going to die for my fellow man. Revolution.
That's a good one. So I have a fan question. We're going to move a little bit into talking about Humpty fucking Dumpty. So actually, I had
language.
Yeah, language. Both Stephanie Bryant and Melissa Bischoff were curious how you guys got together on the project, and you said it's a passion project for the both of you. So, kind of explain how that came about.
Yeah,
do you want to take that one, Stephen?
I think going back to the initial answer before, the Tommy Quickly question about tip of my tongue. Mm-hmm. And then obviously me and Andy became friends and we talked about everything and anything. And then we talked about the fact that Tommy's last single was Humpty Fucking Dumpty, which we always found how every time we met, we'd talk about it and laugh about it. The fact that, Brian Epstein thought it was a good idea for Tommy to sing a rock and roll version of a nursery rhyme. And just the more we talked about it, Andy in some ways physically could get away with playing Tommy, I think. And then as the story was kind of formulating in my mind, it was getting a bit darker and darker, kind of dream-esque, kind of like psychedelic strangeness. And it just seemed like the obvious thing that Andy should play Tommy because one, he's a brilliant actor. Two, I knew him and I knew I could trust him as a person, as a director. And three, I kind of was looking forward to pulling something out of him or helping to that he hadn't done before. And which I think he does in this short film. I think he's brilliant in this short film. I don't know, I'm going to embarrass him because he's very modest. And I can't see how another actor would have brought what he brought to the table when we were filming it. He's very brave, very committed, passionate, not afraid to look ugly in an internal sense. I know he's a good-looking guy, Andy, but he's never afraid to look ugly, never afraid to go beyond the line. And I'm kind of one of those people that I hope I do that in my acting, but I hope that I want that from my actors because the things that I make tend to need that, and I enjoy facilitating that. And I knew that Andy would come up with the goods, and he did that, and more. So that's in a long-winded way how it kind of happened.
I would agree, and so would the fan response that I've gotten on the website.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You think of actors. I mean, I think you just, if you're going to write and direct something, you want to work with actors that are going to be all or nothing. And there's the commitment is 1,000%, and being fearless. All these things that are necessary to being a good actor. And I knew Andy was a good actor anyway from roles that I'd seen him in. And once we became friends and we started, the idea of Humpty Dumpty as a script started formulating, it just seemed like the obvious match to me that we should work together and do something.
And I think that's very, like the excitement of being able to be directed by Stephen, like match that in the sense that he, I've done a few self-tapes with him in the past where you're taping for I think we did one in Morocco and we had so much fun doing that. And I've watched Stephen's short films before, and as an actor, I've admired his work, up close and from afar for years. So the excitement of me being directed by him, it matched that as well, and it felt just the collab. That's why I think, and I'm sure Stephen would agree, as an actor and as a, you know, as an artist, the most joy you can have is to collaborate with somebody who thinks on a similar wavelength to yourself. And that's how it felt on that. I trusted Stephen was going to nudge me in the right directions, and not once did I think he was going to, you know, push it too far or whatever. And I just kind of, you know, handed, as you do as an actor, you hand your trust over to the director's vision. And it was, yeah, it was such an enjoyable process. And that whole thing, the intrigue in the project, actually, just going back to that from both me and Stephen as an actor, and of thinking as being, you know, putting your mind frame as a performer who, you know, auditions for jobs and stuff, and we've both experienced rejection and success on, you know, in moderate terms in comparison to what Tommy was doing with the Beatles. So that story itself, the story of somebody who has toured the world with the Beatles, who has, you know, who has seen things that, you know, the Beatles fan base would take their lives to see, basically. That rise and fall and the psychological effect of that is what intrigued both of us, I think, as artists, away from music, whatever, just watching a human being dealing with that level of success and then the fall, what people would say, or, you know, dealing with the fall is what really intrigued me, aside from it being about the Merseybeat and about the Beatles. And yeah.
And also, I think, you know, there's a fine line I found specifically working with Andy. You know, there's a trust thing, you know, there's a fine line between, you know, an actor maybe thinking that a director's trying to fuck you up in some way, because we go through so many thought patterns and thought processes, and trusting that. And I think anyone that watches it will, I mean, I watched it again after a long time, and I'd sort of forgotten how brave and vulnerable Andy was playing that part. There's some just astounding scenes in that we were kind of working ad hoc. We were kind of going, I was throwing an idea to him going, listen, I want to try this. Listen, let's do this. And he was like, come on, man, let's do it. Because I know that you're wanting the best for this project. It's not trying to trip me up in some way. It's a trust game. That's the thing that I've learned as a directing point of view. And as an actor as well, I will give hopefully my better performances when I'm trusting the guy who's behind the camera. And because Andy is a friend, I would just implore people to watch it just from the point of view of his performance as well, and hopefully to see the film in context too. But all those things and all those ingredients combine together to make Humpty fucking Dumpty, and I'm so glad that we actually got to share it in the way that we have.
Yeah.
We have to take the positives out of this Corona madness and everything else, and to share it with the people that funded it, to get their immediate feedback, the fact that they were glad that they funded it, the fact that it touched something inside of them in a deep way. I mean, what a great way to share a movie with anybody. Maybe it's the future of sharing anything that we make dramatically, I don't know. But just so glad that we made it and that we delivered it in the way that we have.
So I have to give a little shout out to, before this next question, to Bella from Andrew Gower Fans, because she was kind of my, you know, we worked together, kind of promoting. Yeah. So the question that I have is, were you surprised at the support that you received during the Kickstarter campaign?
Is this for both of us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go on, Andy. I've just rambled on.
I mean, I'm sure, as people seen from our regular videos during the whole fundraising campaign, it was like gobsmacking, like amazing support. And as we always say at conventions with the Outlander fans, you know, until you join the show, you don't realize how much of a force and family, the two Fs, the force and family, that the Outlander fans are. So it was amazing every evening, myself and Stephen would be texting each other in disbelief that, we went for a certain mark and then it kept going up. So just again, like to reiterate, like it's an amazing fan base, and we were, just so blown away, and still am that we got to make a film that we're so passionate about. And it wouldn't have happened without the fan base.
I agree. I concur with that. And I think, it's a kind of Humpty Fucking Dumpty was an artistic passion project for me and Andy. And sometimes you do work, maybe a man and his dog will see it, but inside of your own mind, that you've made something as good as your most commercial project. Some people may laud something you've been in and go, oh, it's great. And that's nice. But sometimes the good work that sometimes does go unseen, or sometimes does go under the radar. And projects like this allowed us that opportunity to ask the fans, would you back us with this? Because we believe in this story. It's not something you may be going to see on Grenard at 9 o'clock at night.
You never know.
You never know. But watch this space. But so, like, just repeating what Andrew said, we were just I remember us texting one another saying we've hit what we needed to raise, and we were just blown away by the support of the people that follow us on Twitter, and very grateful. But what came out of it for me was that people want to be a part of an artistic project. People want to contribute to something that is they can say, I had a hand in making that. And on that level, I'm extremely proud to say, it's as much yours as it is ours as well, because you allowed us the space and the time to make it. And now that it's made and people have seen it, I'm just so glad. Yeah. And I'm so proud. And I'm proud of all the actors in it as well. Steve McGowan, got to give a shout out to Steve, who played the caretaker. Wonderful, nuanced, low key, beautiful performance. Gary Gibson, who played John Lennon, startling lookalike, very brave, hadn't done much acting. I think there was a little moment where we were worried we weren't going to get the performance, but we got it. Thank you, Gary, for being brilliant. And just all the elements came together. And I think taking the story back to being on that plane when we had that discussion, for me, sometimes when you create something, it always goes back to the genesis. And it was that first chat that Andy and I had, and it sealed it. And it was fated that we were going to make something to do with Tommy, or the fucking, I don't know, the Mersey Beat or the Beatles, or something that we were both enamored by. And Humpty Fucking Dumpty was what we made.
So I have a fan question from Beth, and she's wondering why you think so many artists are turning to crowdfunding instead of typical studio funding.
I think it's kind of what's in Stephen's answer there. People want to be a part of something that's artistic, and also, if you come out of a commercially successful show, which has its art, but is blown, and there's billboards, and there's TV ads, and there's already a huge fan base, it gives both the audience and the actors and artists making them the opportunity to really go deep into a passion project, to go deep into something that hasn't been explored. And we were very lucky that you guys gave us the opportunity to have so much time with this project, so to have time with it, and also it's a nice way into producing, as well as acting in it with Stephen. I helped produce it, and that was a thing that I've always wanted to do, that process of finding the camera crew and finding locations and all that stuff that we said to that we listed to you guys that we'd need to do. That's always been the thing that I've wanted to do, and Stephen's done before as well. So that was, having that luxury of being able to do that is probably maybe a major reason why people are turning to crowdfunding.
I think the key phrase that came to my mind then as you were talking, Andy, was artistic freedom.
Yeah.
We all read the script. We all knew what we were doing. You were ready I was, the other actors. But within that context, there was always a freedom to express something else, whether you brought it or Steve or Gary, who played John Lennon, or maybe one of the tech guys. And I think having a crowdfunding vibe allows you that freedom to explore those areas in that time, because we're all constrained by scripts and some kind of overzealous director sometimes, and it kind of minimizes, it makes things smaller in some ways. Whereas we would go on a set and, I'm trying to think off my hand, Andy's last line in the script, just to share it with you, which I love, was to do what originally we had an idea of making a documentary about Tommy. And when we met him, we knocked at his door and he wasn't really interested, to be honest. And one of his lines before parting with us was, "I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered." And it resonated with Andy and I as it's really sad that this guy that was in this position didn't really want to talk about his life or his past.
But also quite strong as well, because you think about all the people who have sold their story on the Beatles. I went to school with John Lennon, or Tommy has so many stories to tell. But
in the script, I guess, as opposed to a documentary, Andy, I guess when you said that line, we were going over that scene, and the scene was you just closed the door at the end, and then you threw the line in, "I'm not bothered," and it was just a great ending to the film, a great epitaph. And I guess the point I'm trying to make or to articulate is, if you create an environment where you feel free enough to throw that in, to try it, maybe it won't work, is that's what makes great drama. That's what makes a scene, is that the actor felt free enough to show something, to come up with his own idea or her own idea.
And as you say, with big sets, often the saying is time is money,
Time is money.
Time is money. So you don't often get that time to, add the extra, go again, let's just see what happens. You don't get that time often on a large set. And we were lucky, as Stephen said, with our small unit, and that the Outlander fans had provided for us. We were able to have
a great shout out to our production designer, Marlo August Walters.
Yes.
he provided, I think, what was key casting in the film, which was Willie Talk. And again, without boring people with that story, we were at a convention in New York, and my son is obsessed with dummies. Isn't so much now. And a fan very kindly proffered up Willie Talk. And it became an in-joke with Andrew and I, just because it was. And then at some point we thought we could put him in the piece, Willie Talk. And it slots in perfect. It's those synchronicities that sometimes life shows you when you're making something. Same with Andrew. Again, another great line when Andy says, "Knock, knock, who's there? Who cares?" All that was in the spirit of the moment, within the artistic freedom, the spirit of the moment where you go, show me something else, make up something. So when we get in the edit, we may find a way of putting it in. And if we don't, we bin it anyway. And there was lots of times when that happened. There was a line from Gary, who played John Lennon, when he said, "Tell Buddy Holly over there." I was referring to his missus. Well, that's not in the script. The Buddy Holly is a reference to the glasses that Stephen McGowan, the actor, was wearing. And it was just genius. But I like to think or believe that it was because I allowed that kind of freedom to go express it in your way. It still contextually is the same scene. We kind of contextually keep the same structure, but there's a freedom in that. And so there was lots of moments in there where I couldn't have written. I could only help. I could only encourage. And the individual actor could come up with.
Totally.
So I have another fan question. Stuart Malcolm is curious how long it took to make Humpty Fucking Dumpty, and from concept to finished product, and what was the most frustrating part of the whole process?
The most frustrating thing about it for me was Andrew, full stop. I'm only joking. Frustrating. So again, I take it back to the original conversation. The idea would germinate from conversations that Andrew and I had. And then I think then I started to think about formulating all of those ideas and conversations into a structured form, into a script. And the idea of a dream within a dream, that was my idea. The idea, I thought, can we film a dream gone wrong, a broken dream? So you have Tommy's dreams, and the dream within a dream was it all in his head. And then the notion of, or the idea of, bringing in John Lennon as a kind of a character that haunts him, keeping in theme with the dream. So my idea was, I was trying to hope to shoot a kind of a dream that went wrong. And it's hard to shoot dreams on film. The easy thing is to shoot, semi-documentary film, or everything handheld. And, the idea was for me to compose specific shots that matched the script, that matched Andrew's performance, that were locked inside Tommy Quigley's head. And it's almost like a Head movie. There is a movie actually called Head that was written in 1967 by Jack Nicholson about the monkeys. And it's about a movie inside the head. And I know those themes have been explored many times in film and in different narratives. But that was the persuasion for me for this story, to tell this story like we're almost inside the prism and the prison of Tommy Quigley. And when we came to shoot it, we'd recce the main scene locations, the Adelphi Hotel, the Liverpool Empire, which just looked glorious on film. And a big shout out to Ollie, who was the DOP, because he photographed it so beautifully, whether he was framing Andrew in a door frame, or whether he was shooting a lone corridor, or whether we were shooting inside the theatre with nobody there apart from Andrew on stage. And all of this collective thinking and thoughts hopefully kind of created some kind of vibe of that it was about broken dreams within a dream, like the Russian doll thing, the layers, whether it was Andrew's performance, which was full of layers, just individual scenes were, or whether that was the actual context of the story as a whole.
Totally. And I just to say, like, to reiterate with Stephen's vision of the dream within a dream, when he was, when we were talking over the phone about all of this, and, he was writing the script and we were chatting about that kind of, that feeling of being trapped, then to turn up on the set and just have the opportunity to breathe and play in front of the camera was fantastic. And as I said, the energies of people at even the Liverpool Empire, we had Jed and Steve, or Jed.
Yeah.
And they were helping, they just shut off their whole afternoon and were helping with the curtains and clearing the stage. And so it's a funny thing when you do a passion project, along the way you find people, which is probably an answer to Stuart's question. Along the way we found people who were really as passionate about the project as we were and came on board. Initially, as we said, we had the documentary idea, which didn't work out. Stephen's availability and mine at times didn't match up. But when as soon as we landed on this idea, it was, it happened in, what was it, 3 to 4 days, 3-day shoot.
It was a 3-day shoot. For me, again, what was interesting about this specific edit was I knew that I was getting lots of footage that I would use, but I didn't quite know how. As in, there's a certain dream sequence. There are certain sequences that require a certain detail, and I knew that I just had to pick it up. I had to shoot it, and then I had already sort of thought of the songs or the music that I was going to use. It was just a matter then of compiling the edits, whether it was the music or the specific edit, to fit the story. So on this one, the edit kind of dictated a lot of the film that we now see the way it is. And again, Ollie was great. Nothing was ever too much. If I said, can you make that there? Can you put this here? You do need technical expertise when you're making a complex story. And that's what I learned very much on this. And Ollie was not only great shooting it, as DOP, as director of photography, but he was great in terms of helping me compile the right images to suit the vibe for the scene. Like, there was lots of great stuff. There's a great scene, without giving anything away, where we're kind of, Andy as Tommy is on this kind of mad rant, and it's kind of subconscious. Again, a lot of that was improvised. All I had in the script was a certain few lines where Tommy is on a rant, but then you throw something at Andy and he comes up with something else, or he does something with the phone, or he's screaming at himself in the mirror, whatever it was. I knew that those components would fit that particular part of the story. And what's interesting for me is finding that, or finding something new once the actual movie has been shot. That's what was more interesting for me and more new for me on this particular project.
So you mentioned the Adelphi, and you mentioned the Empire Theater. So it kind of is a good segue into my next question, was that you filmed in 2 iconic Liverpool locations. So how did that come about, and what are your feelings on showcasing some of Liverpool's famous landmarks?
Well, for me personally, I mean, Andrew was really instrumental in getting the Liverpool Empire. He has a certain level of decorum and political awareness that I don't have. But anyway, we got it. And Humpty Dumpty, the version that we use in the movie, where it's inside Tommy's head, again, without giving anything away, that version was actually sung live at the Liverpool Empire. So the spirit of Tommy was with us as well. That was the other eerie thing that I'm glad I have this opportunity to explain, that the theatre we were doing Andrew's scenes in, playing Tommy, was the actual stage that Tommy sung on that day in 1965. So Tommy was his spirit and his energy was around, man, whether it was the physical location or whether it was Andrew's performance. He was around. His energy and spirit was around. And as actors who are cerebral and use their senses and their thinking and their thoughts, I know Andy plugged into that like a plug in a socket. He was on it, and so was I. And so was I directing it.
You're in the empty theatre where he performed. That as an actor, that's. I mean, I think
that was the image for me, or the most powerful image, was you on that stage as Tommy. It's like Tommy, in a way, was performing to an empty theatre, an audience that kind of wasn't aware of who he was. Almost like the concert in his head. That's the other kind of thing as well. This idea that this is all being played out inside Tommy's thoughts and his subconscious and his conscious. And just seeing Andy on the stage in an empty Empire, which is, I think, the biggest theatre in England, it was just, the hairs on the back of your neck went up. And I knew once we had that image, when I shot it from the front, when I shot it from behind Andy, I knew that was the film. And I think that was the poster that we picked, Andy on a chair facing an empty audience, almost like the cursed artist. And again, when we were filming it, we made it with the right intent anyway. But when you're actually doing something, sometimes it materializes in a way where you go, this is why we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. And when we got on that stage in the Empire and in the Adelphi, which is a famous landmark hotel where I'm sure Tommy must have stayed at, the Beatles must have stayed at the Adelphi, all of them artists of that time. There was a sense of that the ghosts of that period were behind us. And sorry, just to finish, Steve has a line of dialogue where he goes, "Lots of ghosts here, kid, lots of ghosts." And there was that sense of the ghosts, of whether it's John Lennon pecking your ear as Tommy, or whether it's Tommy's ghosts, or the ghosts that are played at this beautiful theatre. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, it's actually a perfect lead in, because I had a question for Andrew, that one of the most poignant moments in the film, I thought, was Tommy alone on the stage, in front of an empty theater. And, how did you get into that headspace for that scene?
Yeah, I mean, like that thing that I'm not attracted to success stories as an actor. As an actor, I'm attracted to playing the obstacle of Tommy's career. You all right there, Steve? You're shifted about.
I'm plugging in.
Oh, there we go. We're plugging in. Fantastic. as an actor, that's the story of the coulda, woulda, shouldas of people who have, you know, come so close and it doesn't work out. And not that it didn't work. I mean, what is work it? What is it when it works out? We don't know what is success. A history teacher once said that to me. I hope you succeed. But then again, who is seed? And that stuck with me. Oh, that's really interesting saying. And I think that just applied to the Tommy thing. I mean, why did I want to play him? Because that going back to normal life after you've experienced so much, it's like coming off a really busy acting job. It's like being away for 6 months. I mean, I can't, trying to comprehend that for me as an actor was just so fun to explore. And then again, being in the theatre where he actually performed, singing the song that he performed on that stage is just, yeah. I mean, I will say now, and I hope Stephen, it doesn't mind me saying this, he has written a terrific script that explores beyond this short, and it is utterly fantastic. And you know, if any clever people were out there now who were thinking of, you know, backing Stephen again with a project that wasn't even, you know, that isn't as small as what we made with Humpty Dumpty, even though it feels so epic. I mean, I think it's an epic tale. This story that Stephen's written is, I mean, it's even more exciting. So it's a whole world that it's a great way to see the Beatles without filming a story about the Beatles. I'm more interested in the people that spent time with John Lennon, that spent time with Ringo, that was signed by Brian, that was a king of Liverpool, or the prince of Liverpool, and then he had it all taken away from him. So that was the attraction for me. And to get into the headspace, yeah, I mean, just like every role, just kind of, you know, find the accent, find the headspace. And I knew so much about Tommy anyway, and I care about the project, so it was something I didn't want to play, I needed to play it.
And you know what, to add to that, I say with confidence that I just can't, again, you know, you hope to cast always right. And you know, Andy is a friend first, but I just can't see, I don't know of any other actor that would have done what he did with that part. And you know, and together, you know, working together to get that was the buzz for me. I mean, there's lots of other aspects to it as well, but you know, pulling something out of an actor is, I mean, I love acting and I love actors. So I sometimes think with certain actors, I like to think there's something that hasn't come out of that person yet, a manifestation of some kind in the right role. And you know, Tommy definitely in that sense fits Andy like a glove, and this project like a glove as well.
I mean, Stephen often joke. I always say to Stephen, when am I going to do something in Liverpool? It's actually the first time I filmed in Liverpool, and I was so excited to film something with Stephen. Like, it's the first time we properly, like, apart from that small scene in Outlander between us, it's the first time that we've properly been able to collaborate and do something like, you know, scene to scene work. So it was really, yeah, it was a joy. It was an absolute joy.
And just to add to what Andrew said, then we do have you know, there is I don't want to get too excited about it, but there is a great feature script knocking about, which is an expansion of the short film on every level, and an expansion on the themes in that short film on every level. And, you know, taking the Tommy story back as to why he was the way he was, which is not really developed in the short film because we only had so much time. But this story is, and there's other characters and the people that affected that, whether it's his father, family life, you know, relationships, Brian, even the connection with the Beatles, all these themes are explored on the broader canvas of a feature film. So we do have that script, and it's knocking about, and there's no one else that could play it apart from Andy. And, you know, whether it's next year or the year after or 10 years, there's no one else can do it apart from him and I. So yeah, watch this space. And you know, I don't know whether it would be a crowdfunding thing, because I think its scope is a lot larger, but I think we've certainly made a case with this short film of potential funding for a much bigger canvas.
No, that'd be great. But I want to go back a little bit. You mentioned Gary Gibson, and I don't think I was fascinated when I was kind of doing some research that he's actually a John Lennon impersonator.
Tonight, Matthew, I'm gonna be John Lennon.
Right? And so, was it kind of a bit unnerving to have someone so similar to Lennon on set? Feeling like you're being watched over your shoulder?
I had to stop Stephen taking selfies with him for about 20 minutes.
Yeah. I've actually got a video of me singing "Don't Let Me Down" with him.
Oh, have you?
But I have to say, with Gary, I was doing a scene. We were doing all the really, hard-hitting, highly emotional stuff in the hotel room. Again, without not giving anything away, please watch the film. And Gary just turned up. He knocked on the fucking door, and he turned up with the Stetson hat on and fucking cowboy boots. He looked like something out from Texas in 1955. In fact, he looked like fucking Rock Hudson, giant. And he took his hat off. And I think for about 5 minutes, we were just all staring at him, because it was like, this is literally the physical incarnation of John Lennon. And again, going back to that answer before about, I quickly got over that fact and said, well, listen, Gary, see you tomorrow. I hope you've learned your lines, and we'll see how it goes. And bless him, he wasn't the most versed actor. He hadn't done much, but he understood the legend of Lennon, and he knew about Tommy. And when he turned up on the day after a little sort of conflab, we had a little chat because I was a little bit worried. He knocked it out the ballpark. And I don't think he messed up a take, if I recall. So seeing Gary in the flesh was, well, if there's a greater John Lennon lookalike out there, please come forward, because I don't believe there is.
Stephen will use you for the feature.
Yeah, listen, I mean, John appears in the feature, and I would have no hesitation in using Gary Gibson, none whatsoever.
Brilliant.
So why do you think that Beatles manager Brian Epstein predicted that Tommy would be the biggest star in the world?
I think because just before that point, you're taking an acid tap. Who knows?
He saw him at Widnes Queen Hall, the Queen Hall in Widnes, and he was, as me and Stephen always say, you listen to You Might As Well Forget Him or I'll Go Crazy. He was a rhythm and blues singer, and he was with his original band, the Remo 4. No, the Remo 4.
Oh, no, the Challenges.
Challenges then to the Remo 4. So what happened is Tommy was with the Challenges. Brian signed him. Instantly he said, you're changing your band. This is who you're going to be. And we made, again, an attraction to the part is you can make a direct comparison between these X Factor stars, these instant stars who are signed by, Simon Cowell or these big agencies, and then are told how they're going to be. It even happened to George Michael with Sony. He was controlled, and Lady Gaga was controlled, and these people in the music industry, it's the stories that are told throughout time of people who have been signed with a talent and then have been kind of torn up and chucked out the other end. And that's basically Tommy. He had talent, he had raw talent. Brian saw it, rhythm and blues singer, and he was, it was mistake after mistake with his music career, unfortunately. But he has talent. He had talent.
I think also the feature script that we have again expands on that. Maybe what was their dynamic and what was that really about. And I think Brian was just a kind of, if you read about Epstein, I don't think not many people have a bad word to say about him. He loved his artists. I mean, he adored the Beatles, and he always said to everybody else that he signed the Beatles are number one. But I'll still, and he got hits from many other artists. And I think in the case of Tommy, I would say in reference to that quote, I mean, it's quite funny, and it's used in the movie as well. I think he had a blind faith. I think he believed in Tommy. I think he believed that Tommy had something that could be manifested or expressed in a way that would make him some kind of global artist or.
But you signed to a manager who's managing the biggest band in the world, and you tell a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid that he's not going to be the biggest star. You know, that is a tunnel vision of success. You know, the blueprint with the Beatles is decided, and Tommy's one of the five, you know, who's been signed to the book. So, you know,
I mean, you could be forgiven for thinking that you were going to make it, wouldn't you? And, you know, Lennon McCartney at the time was like, you know, Rodgers Hammerstein. It was like, they were it. Lennon McCartney was gold. Anything they touched was a hit. You know, there was a great line. Someone said if Paul McCartney fell on a piano, he would get a hit out of it. So Tommy had every reason, and Brian had every reason, Jackie, to believe that this was going to work out. And again, I think Humpty effing Dumpty is about the disappointment of that, the disappointment of a broken dream, the disappointment of why didn't it work out? You know, the dream inside of his head of being a star on the stage. And yet really at the end of the day, he's alone all by himself. And there's nobody that, I mean, in some kind of context, it is Shakespearean. It's a Shakespearean story. It's like Tommy's story in a way is one of those where you think you couldn't write it. You couldn't write it, or everything was aligned. The stars were aligned. 1963, the Beatles, Lennon McCartney, original tunes, the backing of the most powerful manager in the world. John
Lennon's called you Tommy Quickly as opposed to Tommy Quigley, you know.
Tommy Quigley, even John Lennon's christened you. Mm-hmm. And it for whatever reason, it didn't work out.
Which kind of leads me into a fan question. And Janet Merrill had some great questions. So I've got a second one of hers. And she said, the Beatles song No Reply was offered to Tommy. Do you think if he had recorded and released it, it would have made a difference in his life?
There we go.
You know what? It's the road less traveled, isn't it? It's like, do I go left or do I go right? I mean, funny enough, as a story to that, is it Janet?
Yes.
The story goes that when they got in the studio to record No Reply, Tommy was plastered. Tommy got so drunk
with Ringo
that they decided to abort the fucking recording and all got drunk in the studio. So again, it's an unknown for Tommy. You know, it is an interesting question. Had they recorded No Reply, which by the way is a great song, and if you go on Anthology #2, there's a rock and roll version of No Reply, and if you read the books, I think that was the version that was intended to suit Tommy's voice. And there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't have been a hit. But again, it's that kind of strange anomaly that Tommy turns up fucking pissed, can't sing a fucking note, and they just decide to get bladdered together.
So the film is kind of a cautionary tale exploring the dark side or the negative impact of fame and the loss thereof. So I have a question from Melby, and she says, Tommy Quickly's story is profound. How do you, both of you, protect yourselves in the entertainment industry where disappointment and rejection are part of the gig?
Yeah, you've got to have a grounding in life. I'd like to think, you know, Stephen's a family man. I'm a family man. I like to think, you know, if I don't succeed in some audition or something in work does happen to, you know, take me out of kilt in a way, or, you know, take me away from reality, I'd like to think that my family would be there for me to ground me and say, listen. And I always say that about Liverpool. Actually, I don't think I'd ever be able to get back to Liverpool if I behaved in some glamorous way. I don't think they'd let me through Outer Lime Street. They'd send me straight back on the Virgin train. I mean, because it's that thing of, you know, my family keep me grounded, and I think the fame aspect of getting carried away with you know, big parts or big projects or whatever, I've been lucky enough to have that support around me.
I agree with Andy. I think, you know, anybody whose life is totally invested in their next role or their career for that matter, I think in a strange way doesn't have a life. I think what's key is to have a life away from what you do. What we do is a massive component of what we are, what we do, but it's not the total identification of that, so whether it's, a partner or a child or other interests outside of it, you approach those things with the same passion, maybe more, and they then infuse the work when you work. I think it's the fuel, man. You have to have a life away from what you do, because ironically, when you do get the opportunity to then do it, you do it with everything you've got. And I always say that when you're working, when you're on that set, nothing else exists. But by the same token, when you're changing your kid's nappy, nothing else exists. Or when you're going for a walk in the park with your dad, nothing else exists. And I think when you have so much invested in one element of a life, I think you're in trouble. And I think it means by nature that your life is not very enriched anyway. So I think, what we do is a part of your life, but it's important to have a life.
Yeah, and I actually think the best moment of magic on screen are real kind of nuggets of life, like kind of truthful life landing on the camera. And
Yeah.
you don't get that. You do not get that if you don't live. Like and that's another lesson I guess we both learned being in this industry is, like you don't get told that at the beginning, but you're only fuel to keep you going and to keep your kind of work regenerating. And these characters who you want to play is through living your life, yeah.
Stephen, I have a fan question for you from Anna O'Keefe. She says, movie shorts done well can really tell a deep, moving story like you've achieved in Humpty Fucking Dumpty. What draws you to short films versus full length?
Sometimes it's just, thank you, Anna, for the question. Sometimes it's just expediency. You can knock off a short film in a couple of days. You can have an idea and shoot it really fast. And the thing that I always think about, whether it's Humpty Dumpty or any of my other shorts, if you look at them, you'll see that the context where it's located is very kind of not restricting, it's just limited deliberately. And it's done that way so you can shoot it quick. It doesn't make it any less interesting. In fact, it can sometimes make it more interesting. And I think the challenge of the short form, the short medium, is can I convey some kind of story, some kind of ethos, philosophy, idea, thought in 15 minutes, in 20 minutes. And the next one I hope to make will be, I think it's maybe 40 minutes. It's not quite a feature length. It's something that I hope to do with Andy as well, and hopefully Big Duncan Lacroix. It's a story provisionally titled Brothers. And again, it will be expanded upon, but with a larger canvas, maybe more locations, adapting it in a way that the canvas is bigger. But in a way, if you look at Humpty Dumpty and what it captures in 20 minutes, from a protected point of view, I would argue that it is a large canvas. It does cover a lot. It gives off a lot. So going back, I think the challenge of the short film is to see whether you condense a large idea sometimes into a shorter framework.
So we're going to change tacks a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your experiences on Outlander, maybe a story from the set or something you learned from your time on the show. We'll start with Andrew.
Oh, let's go back to the Outlander memories.
Memory.
I mean, one of the craziest days on Outlander, but one of my favorite days on Outlander was actually that scene we did when Graham McTavish was on the horse, and he had to go out into Preston Pan. He had to go out and check the field on his horse, and we were all clapping him and kind of sticking our fingers up to the jacket, to the English soldiers. See, all my Outlander jargon's out the window here at the moment. And yeah, that day was glorious for me because, I mean, as lucky as I had been working with Sam and Duncan consistently, and all of our wonderful French actors and Kat, it was wonderful to see the likes of Stephen and reminisce with him, and Graham meet him for the first time, and Grant, and so it's just great. That was a fun day, and the weather was gorgeous, and yeah, and I was in my shortbread outfit for the first time, and I got a massive thumbs up from Terry and Ron. It was nice to see them down on set. Everybody was on set that day because the weather was gorgeous. So yeah, that's kind of one of my fondest days. And then the same battlefield we went back to when I was on stage doing 1984 on stage, and I drove overnight to come back and film that one scene in season 3. And I just had all memories of the old gang, and they weren't there. Nobody was there apart from Sam. So yeah, that was my most fond day of filming, definitely.
Great.
How
And
about
Stephen,
you,
your
Steve?
turn.
A specific day.
Sure, just your experience on the show in general, or something that you learned.
I think it was more the collective vibe, to be honest with you. For season 1, it was kind of a small group of actors that were together, seemed to be together for a long period of time. A lot of waiting around, a lot of storytelling, a lot of jokes. So I think it was the comradeship of actors, just as much as the actual filming. I have good memories of filming with Grant, some stuff. There's some nice bits in there. Kat. Duncan became a friend for life. And I think sometimes you kind of look at jobs on that, like Andy. Sometimes you look at jobs and it's more, what were the effects after it? How did it affect your private life? And those things sometimes are more profound than the actual job itself. And I'd say, in the context of Andrew as a friend and Big Duncan, 100%, it was special on that level for me personally.
You were the first person I told about the job, the Outlander job, weren't you?
That's right. Yeah.
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 When I landed the job, it was my mum on the phone, and then it was Stephen, in that order.
I also think, the Outlander gig was such a big number, such a kind of, sometimes, I've been on a few of them where the production's so big that the wheel's so big that all these cogs within this wheel, sometimes it's hard to specify anything specific. It's more a vibe of how you felt just doing it in general. I think most of us were up in Scotland for 18 months on and off, or 2 years, whatever the time was. And, that can't not affect you. And I love Scotland, I have to say. Scotland had a big effect on me. I always love getting back to Scotland when I've been back filming since, and I love it. The Scottish people in general, I really liked. So I think an Outlander gig was it was the whole experience rather than just filming a scene or a role on any specific day.
Although I will say that your death scene was epic. The Outlander fans still talk about that.
Yeah, well, what was funny about that? I think what was nice about it, again, personally, what was nice about it was everyone was there. So these people that you've spent your life with, that know the color of your underwear, probably, they were all there. And so when you're doing your final scene, and I don't know whether it was deliberate on behalf of the producers, that was my last scene, last day, last take, everybody there. So in a way, that was beautiful in a sense of, it was the end of the character, and it was a goodbye to everybody. So it was kind of beautiful in that sense. Mm-hmm. And then, I know it sounds mad, not that I'm a materialistic person, I'm not. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not. But going back to the trailer and seeing it decked out with flowers and presents, which I didn't know, I just thought, me, it's like, okay, round of applause, goodbye, shut off, next scene. And then I got back and it was like, oh my God, and it was nice reading the messages of everybody and what you meant to them. And so it was more the human connection of the person. Even though I really enjoyed the role, I enjoyed the project. Some of the writing was great. Some of the directors were great. Like any job, there's good and bad. There's up and a down. Nothing is perfect. But I think because of the size of the gig, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint it to one specific.
Sure. And Andrew, I think we can't say anything about Bonnie Prince Charlie without Mark Me.
Who says that line?
I don't know.
Marky.
But every time that's what comes up, and you know, he's a pivotal character in the series, but I think you took something and made it. I think you humanized him actually, because so many people see Bonnie Prince Charlie and think, what a numbskull.
Yeah.
And you know, I think the feel I got was more just that he didn't know what he was doing.
Mm. Who does know what we're doing, eh? Nobody knows what we're doing.
That's all of
Especially
us, right?
now especially Boris telling us to stay alert. How do you stay alert? You know? Yeah, so we're all being led or trying to lead, and unfortunately, Bonnie Prince Charlie has you know, fell subject to that. But yeah, great one to play, and fantastic outfits.
So how do you feel about the Outlander fans who have not only championed you on the series, but you know, on into your other projects, both past and present?
I think they're all mad. I think they're great. You know, my bottom line has always been, I might not even share your passion, but passion recognizes passion. And what you couldn't say about the Outlander fans is they're not passionate. And something of that spreads and is infectious in some way. So on that level, I think they're great, you know, and they've always been nothing but hospitable and kind when I've met them. Always sort of supporting, whether it's Humpty fucking Dumpty or whether it's a personal comment about what they thought of the, you know, in my case, Angus Moore, or whatever it was, or some other project you've been involved with. And it's probably a passion on a level, I think it's fair to say, you wouldn't compare with most programs. I think if you had another two in your career that was on that level, you would have been blessed.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's its own animal. It's its own monster. It's got good and bad. But I think ultimately it's, from my perspective, it's a force for good and positivity. And, you know, we get to speak to people like you and meet random people from California and fucking Argentina and Australia or whatever it is. And, you know, that all of that. And we, you know, I mean, you know, I must have seen Andy about 3 or 4 different times in America, in different places. So for that's unique.
Yeah.
And it's taken us around Europe. And so the opportunities that it's presented, again, away from the title Outlander, is, again, it's more of a life thing as opposed to the actual show itself. It's everything combined. And so on that level, I think the fans it's a thumbs up, definitely.
Yeah, I totally. I was just checking then on my phone. When did we finish? Because we finished at the same time, didn't we, Stephen? Was it 2000 and when was it?
Oh, mate.
2016, 17. I've just found it then.
Was it
2016, 17? So
I can't remember. Yes.
And I've, you know, I've met more of the Outlander cast and fans than I did whilst I was filming it. So in that aspect, and as far as the fans go, they've like every project I've done since, I'm sure Stephen would say the same. I've had many a thumbs up of support, and you know, of people saying I'm going to check that out, and the family of Outlander have always backed any project I've seen that the cast want to make. So yeah, I would say to same as Stephen, they are a force to be reckoned with, a completely different spectrum of fan base that, you know, if I was to have it again, I would be very, very blessed. So, yeah.
Also, my fondest memories, again, is like, I mean, it's silly really, but like singing Don't Let Me Down with Andy on stage in New York and singing our Tommy song, which not many people have heard. We haven't recorded it, and yet we sung that live. And Andy whistles it in the film again. if you take note, guys, if you haven't seen it, or go back and watch it again, Andy kind of alludes to the song that we actually wrote about Tommy. But the only recording of that song was in New York. And again, the memory of that is a kind of, life's about memories, really. It's about making memories, whether it's in your job or your life. It's all the same. And so stuff like that, I mean, I'll send Andy a text about that, and we'll just howl for hours about it.
And we got to do karaoke with Stephen Cree.
Stephen Cree, I mean, West End singer.
And then we got to do karaoke with David Berry and Lotta, all of them. I mean,
all it was amazing.
It was fantastic. I mean, that's just the laughs that, I mean, we've had so many laughs with the fans, but I mean, you want to see us behind the scenes. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious. So very, very lucky. Very lucky.
So Stephen, we've seen several of your short films now. Danny Boy, Harry Potter Sleeps with the Fishes, I'm Not Here, which if you haven't seen it, is about Charles Manson. Trust me, go watch it. It's on YouTube. So do you have anything else in the works?
Oh God, I mean, I have lots in the works. I mean, the feature film of Tommy is something I'm excited by. And, if it takes a couple of years, Andy will be ready and I'll be ready. And the script is ready. It's always can always be modified and changed, but we have a great story that we want to tell and expand upon from the short. What I want to do next is a script it's provisionally called Brothers, and it's about two brothers. And again, I think any important art, I hate that word because it sounds highbrow, but anything that has meaning has to be personal, has to come from you in some way. And again, this is it's maybe in some ways, all my work is personal. It has to be, but this is probably the most personal because it's about, brotherly love and my brother. And I would love Andy and Big Duncan LaCroix to play the brothers. I have the script nearly ready. I think it's somewhere in between a short film and a feature. It's not quite either. But it's a larger canvas again from Humpty fucking Dumpty. And I'm just excited by it. I was reading it the other day and I was weeping my heart out, to be honest with you. It was like, I thought, this is one that I've got a few like that, but I think this is one that's doable. And maybe down the line, again, I'm hoping to ask the generous fans to get behind it. What's nice about a lot of the comments is that they were saying about how they were glad that they contributed it financially towards the project. And if they would love to see Andrew and Big Duncan just putting it out there in a drama, in a beautiful, heartfelt, hard-hitting, mean mother of a script, then if you want to see those two, then, at some point I would love to appeal to the fans again to get behind us if they would like to see that. And what's infused that is reading the comments, the specific comments, and how they feel a part of that they've helped to make something. And the only thing that I could say contextually, it's very different. But, I wouldn't waste my own time making it, and I wouldn't waste the time of people like Andy and Duncan if it wasn't worth it. And so it's a different animal to Humpty fucking Dumpty, but just as good and just as profound and just as real. And I hope at some point we can make it happen.
So do I. Andrew, so we just saw you in Carnival Row, which I got to go to the premiere of, which was fantastic. And Miss Scarlet and the Duke, which hopefully we'll get in the US soon. It's not here yet. Is there anything else that you've got coming up you can tell us about?
That's it, I think. Carnival Row season 2. We were 3 weeks away from filming. The film I shot last year, Running Naked, but that's still in the edit, so I don't know where. But we were 3 weeks away from finishing season 2 of Carnival Row in Prague, and then Trump's travel ban came in, so all our American team had to head back to head back to the States, and then we've been here, and yeah, that was the 13th of, I think it's the 13th of March. I came back to the UK, so yeah, so touch wood, that'll be finished off soon. But yeah, that's a fun one. So, and yeah, it's been. I'm glad. I didn't know you got to go to the premiere.
I did, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And so we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Stephen, you brought up brothers, and the last question I have from fans is Nikki in Scotland asked if the two of you would like to work together again on another project, which obviously you do.
Stephen has put it all so well. I mean, I think you can tell exactly how we felt about working with each other on the first one, and it's been, I mean, there's stories to be, as I said, with Stephen's script, with his feature-length script, and anything Stephen's writes, he's got a real just kind of talent of, I'm trying to think of a word that is beyond talent, just a real directness of how to touch into the human side of a character and put that onto page, and then explore themes and allow acting. Even from the first time I did a tape with him, he just made me feel comfortable. I think he has that knack with fans and with people, and on his set, it was just, as we've said, so it's like a playground. But it felt like it had his vision shining through it. So yeah, I mean, I'd implore anybody to sign up and do it. And yeah, his words are just fantastic to perform.
So if you want to see Andy and Duncan playing brothers, leave your comments. I think it'd be great. I do. And I have the bit between my teeth, but the feature length I keep banging on about of Tommy is, and what's nice again about a lot of the comments is people said that they wanted to see more. And again, you're restricted within the confines of whatever you're working within. It was a 20-minute short film that managed to get across a lot, I think. But to do a feature film of it, let's talk of maybe Maxine Peake. There's a scene of great actors over here. Maxine Peake are playing an integral role in the feature, and so there's a lot of discussions and ideas being knocked around already. Andrew and I and maybe a few others have read the script, and we're kind of up for it. Strange times at the moment, but when things find an even keel and a certain normality of level or whatever it is, then we can look at that again.
It's not often, as an audience as well, you get to see the Beatles through a different lens, and I think Tommy's story, which we've touched on with the short, and it alludes to the scope of being able to show that story through the lens of Tommy Quickly is that's very, very exciting.
So I just want to thank everybody. I'm going to give you guys the final word in a moment, but I just want to thank everybody for joining us on this discussion. If you haven't watched the film yet, go to www.humptyfilm.com, check it out. The film's there at the very top. It says play right across it. Just click the button. And then if you scroll down through the rest of the website, it gives you some information about the actors, some stills from Dave Gleave did the photos.
Oh, Dave.
Fabulous. There's some photos at the bottom. You've got some audience reactions at the very bottom. Leave a comment and it will get to both Stephen and Andrew, whatever you see on there. So final word, guys.
So to reiterate what Jackie just said, www.humptyfilm.com. Watch it if you haven't already. If you've watched it, watch it again, because you'll find some little nuggets and pearls of wisdom that you didn't see first time. Spread the word. If you like the idea of us maybe doing a feature film, spread that word. If you like the idea of us, Andy and I, and maybe Duncan getting together to do our own film, keep spreading the word. I'd like to thank you, Jackie, as well, for being so good and so helpful in terms of just plugging the film, believing in us, promoting us, doing the website, doing this today. It's appreciated, it's thanked. I think the fans are thankful as well. Anyone else to thank? Or thank Andy for doing it? It's turning into one big thank fest, isn't it?
It is. I'd like to, say thank you, Jackie, like yourself and Isabel, who runs, who I know runs my page, has been, both of you from the off have been fantastic. The Outlander homepage, who I know have sent me many a message in support. Diana, the writer of Outlander, the birther of the books, and we all love so much, has been such a constant supporter to me and Stephen, as is, our backers like Rondi Moore and Maril, and so all the
Ira
Burr, fantastic.
Richard Kahn.
Yeah, Richard Kahn. So we can't, we'd spend all day thanking people, but it's not often you get to make something that you came up with on a plane going to Morocco with your pal. So we really thankful to all of you guys, and yeah, we can't implore you enough to spread the word about the Humpty film. It's something that's come from both of mine and Stephen's heart.
And that's it. Game over.
Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see y'all later.